Right, so hello and welcome to my latest video. It's going to be a story time video today. I want to actually talk about what it was like to be me growing up. When I was younger, I was just like every other kid. You know, you play with your toys, you like to play hide and go seek, you like your cartoons, you know, and everything was normal. And then around grade 5 and grade 6, when kids are beginning to get a little bit more mean, because I think around grade 5 or 6, kids are starting to decide what's cool and what's not. So for example, around grade 5 or 6, LL Cool J was really cool. Wearing merchandise from the Los Angeles Raiders and the Chicago Bulls was cool. Wearing the pullover jackets with the hood, but they didn't have a zipper. You could just pull them over and they had like team logos on them. They were cool. Playing sports, definitely playing sports. Very cool. You also had to be tough. You had to learn how to fight. You had to know how to kick ass to be tough. When I was growing up, that was also something that was very important. Because grade 5 or 6, around that age is the time when kids decide what is cool because they're seeing the older kids do it. And then a general consensus of cool forms. I sort of began to stick out like a sore thumb around that stage of my life. I was already pretty much obsessed with superheroes and Batman. Not only was I not ready to give up all those things that I was still very much interested in from my childhood. I remember thinking, I'm in grade 5, why do I want to give up that stuff? I mean, I'm only 10 years old. Why is 10 too old to play with G.I. Joes and superheroes? I didn't understand it. To me, it just didn't make any sense. I thought they were just being stupid and trying to grow up too fast. Not only did I have that problem as far as they were concerned, but I also couldn't afford any of the cool clothes. My dad and mom didn't make enough money to afford to be able to buy me the really expensive Los Angeles Raiders and Chicago Bulls stuff. Believe me, I wanted it because I wanted to fit in. I just couldn't afford it. I didn't have the money to wear all the expensive t-shirts and pants and shoes. Oh, don't get me started. I couldn't afford expensive basketball shoes. So while everyone else was wearing Reebok pumps or the latest expensive Nike shoes or Air Jordans or something like that, with their Raiders hats and their, Chicago Bulls jackets and stuff like that, I couldn't afford any of that. My parents didn't make enough money. My dad didn't earn enough at his job at the Brickyard. My mom worked at Eaton's, but it still was never quite enough money for me to be able to afford the popular clothes. Kids notice that stuff, and they're like, why aren't you wearing the popular clothes? And you're like, well, because I can't afford them. And they're unforgiving. They'll make fun of you for stuff that you honestly can't even control. Like, hey, your ears are big, or your skin's white, or you got red hair. Let's kick a ginger on Kick a Ginger Day. Kids have no control over any of that stuff. And so honestly, sometimes little kids are dicks. And I think partially that's because they're trying to be cool themselves and they don't even want even the chance of being slumped in with the I'm not cool crowd. And so the only other option is to ostracize people that aren't like you. I'm not saying that was all of the cool kids, but it certainly was some of them. At the very least, they didn't want me as part of their club. Basically, I was different. I was different because of my financial standing. I was different because I didn't care to be cool. I didn't even know what cool music was. And in grade 6 is when people were starting to decide what music was cool to listen to and what wasn't. I listened to Michael Jackson. I liked MC Hammer, he was cool, and I liked Vanilla Ice. I had the album with Ice Ice Baby on it, but that was like really the extent of what I had. I grew up on some pretty darn cool music from the 60s and 70s that my parents used to listen to, so I knew what good music was, but it wasn't my music. So I was not cool at all. To summarize, I still played with toys, grade 5 and 6. I still liked things that the kids liked. I didn't know what cool music was. I didn't have, nor could I afford, cool clothes. And I was a little bit different. I was maybe a little bit hyperactive and high-strung, and because I wasn't concerned with a lot of the same things that the typical cool kids were, I stuck out like a sore thumb and they wanted nothing to do with me. I mean, I did have a really, really great friend named Marco that I hung out with for years, but he was 2 grades younger than me, and we didn't really hang out at school because you typically hung out with people in your grade. You didn't hang out with people that were younger than you at school. Shut up, phone! Siri, why won't you shut up?
I don't know what that means.
You need to be quiet, Siri.
Noted.
Thank you. But for kids in my grade, I typically just hung out with what you would call the loser crowd. We weren't even called the not cool crowd. We were called the losers. The cool kids and the losers. The cool crowd was huge. It was most of the class. And they all hung out in the tennis court and did cool things while we were relegated to the rest of the schoolyard. There was the one kid who picked his nose and ate it. There was another kid who left sandwiches in his desk and they got really freaking moldy. It was nasty. Girls really didn't want anything to do with me. I was pretty much picked last for any team we played on. Whenever we played any kind of sport, for example, if it was baseball, I would come up to bat and there was always some dickhead in my class who was like, "Oh, heavy hitter, everyone move back," which really just meant everyone friggin' moved up to make fun of me. They're thinking, "You can't hit the ball." And I was actually pretty darn good at baseball. But it was friggin' embarrassing to have the whole class center me out like that. There was this one time when I actually did manage to get my hands on a Los Angeles Raiders baseball cap. I remember it was corduroy. It had the logo splayed across the front. It wasn't a fullback. It was popular to have a fullback hat. It had the thing on the back, but that was as close as I was gonna get. And I found it in the Lost and Found at school. I couldn't even afford one. I just found it in the Lost and Found and no one claimed it. And so I was like, cool, at least I have one and I fit in a little bit, like I can camouflage how weird I am to the rest of the world by wearing this hat. It turned out one of the cool kids wanted it and they wanted to beat me up and take it. And so one night after school, I used to take a different way home from school because if you took through the field home, between the cornfield, if you took that way home during corn season, you got pelted with corn by the friggin' cool kids. You'd be like ducking while corn was bouncing off your face and your head. It sucked. So because of this, I would actually take a completely different way home from school. Instead of leaving out the back of the school, I would leave out the front of the school, and instead of going through the cornfield and getting pelted by all the corn missiles, I would walk out the front and then down the highway to get home because it was safer. Well, they must have got wise to that, and literally, one day, my entire class showed up out front of me and headed me off at the, "Shut up, phone!" and headed me off at the pass, and they were like right in front of me, and they all pointed, and they all laughed, "Ah, ha, ha, ha." And I was like, why are they laughing at me? You know, And then the toughest kid in class, his name was Richard, he decided he was gonna run after me for some reason. He's running down the street, and I was like, well, I can't fight him. Definitely can't fight him. He terrifies me. So I hightailed it and I took off down the road, but he was slow and stocky. So I knew he wasn't going to catch me. I was a runner. He wasn't. And then who comes after me? We had one Asian guy in our entire class. His name was John. The guy could seriously jump kick as high as my head. He could jump as high as my frickin' head and kick me in the face. He was also incredibly fast. And so he began to run. And not only did he overtake Richard, he was going to catch me. And I had to go to a block parent. I went up the steps and knocked on the door of a block parent. And you know what they wanted? The bastards wanted my hat. Guess who gave him the hat? This guy. I didn't want to get kicked in the face by a guy who could jump as high as my face and kick it. It was humiliating, to say the least. But I went to school every day and just kept going to classes and holding my head up high and trying to feel like I wasn't just a little piece of shit nothing. And I made it all the way through grade school like that. There is kind of a silver lining because in the very last half of my grade school, things sort of changed and there was the cool crowd, there was the loser crowd, and then there was this like in the middle crowd. And I went out to BC with my family for like 11 months. My dad moved out there for work, and it was around the time that grunge was really popular. And so I went out there wearing hat like this and baggy pants and like hip hop kind of gear. And then I was made fun of out there too and picked on and bullied and pretty much beat up out there in school. But through it all, I fell in love with Nirvana and grunge rock, and I started wearing plaid and I grew my hair out and it was cool. And not only could I be cool, but you could buy all your clothes at the Salvation Army and it didn't even cost that much money. And for the first time ever, I actually didn't give a crap what anyone thought of me. So the job that my dad went out there to get went belly up. When I came back to Ontario from BC 11 months later, I ended up moving into, no kidding, the house right next door to the house that I grew up in. So I ended up having to go to the exact same school with all the same kids that I grew up with that had decided what was cool and I didn't fit that. And I made one decision, a very clear decision. I remember making this decision. I don't care if they think I'm cool. And that was it. I went there on the first day And because I didn't give a crap at all what they thought of me, I was like, I'm king shit of Turd Island. That's how I felt. Not that I was trying to rub it into people's faces, but let me tell you, it is a big release when you finally wake up and go, it doesn't even matter what people think of me. Who cares? I just want to be me. And if they don't like it, that's tough titties on them because it's not their life, it's mine. You feel like a weight has just been lifted off your shoulders when you don't give a crap what anyone thinks of you. And that's how I spent the very end of my time in grade school. I honestly didn't care. I remember on the first day of school, my first day back, this one kid who was just a douche, he decided to like come across the road and like push me on the ground in front of the crosswalk person, no less, who did jack all about it, just watched it. Instead of going, maybe you shouldn't push that other student on the ground, he just watched the whole thing. Where I would have been horrified, I wasn't. I just got up and I just thought, guy's a dick. That was it. I wasn't afraid of him. I didn't want to fight him, but I just really didn't care at all. I remember thinking about him later that I felt sorry for him because I remember legit thinking he was kind of stupid and heartless too. Like, who walks up to someone and just throws them on the ground for no reason at all to try and assert how tough you are? Ooh, you pushed the one kid on the ground who is guaranteed to not want to fight you. Real frickin' tough there. Just a little factoid, that's what bullies do. They're actually giant pussies. The rest of my grade school year actually went off really, really well. I remember I really enjoyed myself in the last part of grade 8 because this whole group of people who just didn't want to hang out with the cool crowd, we all just hung out together and everyone kind of left us alone. They were like, all right, this crowd's actually pretty big. There was probably about 14 of us that all hung out together and we didn't fit in with them, but we didn't really want to fit in with them either. We wanted to kind of do our own thing. And there was this like sort of respect thing that went back and forth. They were just like, oh, that's them and we're us and let's just leave it be. I've since fallen out of touch with all the kids from grade 8 that I knew from back in the day, minus a few people that I know on Facebook, but I don't talk to them really or hang out with them. It's been such a long time. So yeah, as much as I've got some pretty negative memories of grade school, things that just made me feel horrible and helped shape me to some extent to who I am today, I also have really great memories of what it was for me to be in grade school, what it was to be little Brad going through elementary school. Anyway, that's all I have time for. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble on about what it was to be in grade school for me. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. If you liked it and you want to see more of this face, you can click that red button and then you'll get more of whatever I put up on this channel. And you never know what I'm going to put up on this channel because I never know what I'm going to put up on this channel. I got a whole phone full of ideas and I just kind of pick one at random and then make a video of it. So that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time. Goodbye.